it's not easy. They play too many games for me.
And if it keeps this way, it will be a moment that we have no other option.
All the best players, I don't care what people say, they were tired. Those guys that reached the 60s, they were tired. I don't want to see that. I want to see the best players on the field delivering. This is why people pay.
Imagine a world where Bayern Munich doesn't win the Bundesliga, where Manchester United is fighting relegation and clubs like Union Berlin, Girona, Aston Villa and Brighton are qualifying for the Champions League. Sounds crazy, right? But that's exactly what's happening. The giants of European football are being taken down one by one. And the craziest part, this might just be the beginning. So, what's causing this shift and how could it change the future of football forever? Football has always been a sport of dynasties, those big, untouchable clubs that dominate their leagues year after year. But recently, something strange has been happening. Look at Napoli. A few seasons ago, they won their first Serie A title since 1990, dethroning Juventus and the Milan giants in the process. Over in Germany, Bayer Leverkusen pulled off a stunner by winning a domestic double, taking home the Bundesliga and the DFB Pokal. This wasn't just a fluke, they genuinely outperformed Bayern Munich, who went an entire season without a trophy. That's right, Bayern, the team that won 10 straight Bundesliga titles, ended up empty-handed. If that doesn't make you sit up and take notice, I don't know what will. And while these two results alone are enough to shake things up, the list of unexpected successes doesn't end there. Liverpool had their worst league season since 2012, Chelsea their worst since 1991, and Manchester United, well, they are sitting as low as 14th in their Premier League at 1 point. These are the clubs that we expect to be at the top, battling for every trophy, but these years, they're struggling to stay afloat. Meanwhile, clubs like Brighton, Girona, VfB Stuttgart and Union Berlin are making their first ever appearances in the Champions League. These teams, who not long ago were fighting relegation, are now mixing it up with Europe's elite. It's not just a one-off, these smaller clubs are consistently putting pressure on the traditional powerhouses. Girona's story is nothing short of incredible. Just 24 years ago, this team was battling it out in the 5th tier of Spanish football, but now they've risen all the way to the 3rd place in La Liga, finishing just behind giants like Real Madrid and Barcelona. And here's the crazy part, Real Madrid's squad cost 14 times more than Girona's in transfer fees. But despite that, Girona has made its mark on the top of Spanish football. It's almost hard to believe, right? So, what's going on? How are these smaller teams suddenly finding success and why are the big clubs struggling? A big part of it has to do with fixture congestion. In the past few seasons, the football calendar has become absolutely packed. Between domestic leagues, European competitions, international matches and cup games, the top teams are playing more games than ever before. And when you're a big club, you're expected to compete on all fronts. This means that the best players are playing almost every game, and that is leading to more injuries and fatigue. Just look at the number of key players who have been sidelined this season. Kevin De Bruyne missed a huge chunk of time with injury. Rodri and Carvajal have been dealing with injuries. When these superstars aren't on the pitch, their teams struggle to maintain their usual level of dominance. And it's not just one or two players, it's happening across the board. The big clubs simply can't keep their top players fit and firing because they're being asked to do too much. Barcelona are forced to play kids from La Masia because their top players are out injured. These top teams are expected to compete in multiple competitions, leagues, domestic cups, Champions League, and then there's international duty. Look at what's happening to the likes of Real Madrid, Liverpool, and Manchester United. Real Madrid might have the best squad on paper, but how many times have they had key players out with long-term injuries? Liverpool, a team that was on top of the world a few years ago, had their worst season in a decade. Not because they suddenly became bad, but because their squad was stretched too thin. United? They're struggling to even find their rhythm because their best players are getting worn out. It's no coincidence that the big teams are dealing with more injuries than ever before. And when your best players are missing, what happens? The door opens for the smaller teams to sneak in and steal the show. Bayern Munich's injury troubles contributed to their collapse last season. Liverpool's defensive crisis basically derailed their entire campaign. Meanwhile, the smaller teams have a bit of an advantage. They aren't playing as many games and they don't have the same pressure to win every competition. This allows them to rotate their squad more effectively and keep their key players fresh for the important matches. While the big teams are grinding through a jam-packed schedule, the smaller teams are able to focus on their domestic leagues or a specific tournament, and it's paying off. Rodri recently warned that players are close to striking, and it's not hard to see why. Alongside Real Madrid stars like Dani Carvajal and Thibaut Courtois, Rodri has highlighted the insane demands being placed on top footballers. The packed schedule is pushing them to the limit, with major tournaments like the expanded Club World Cup in the US next summer, which will run until mid-July. But here's the catch. The Premier League won't delay the start of the 2025-26 season, meaning players might get just 4 weeks to rest before diving into a new campaign. With more games being added to the competition like the Champions League and Europa League, it's no wonder fatigue and injuries are becoming the norm. But fixture congestion is just one part of the puzzle. There's also the fact that recruitment has become a lot smarter. Clubs like Brighton, Napoli and Real Betis are finding hidden gems, players who the big clubs either overlook or pass on, and turning them into stars. Brighton, for example, has mastered the art of scouting lesser-known talents and developing them into quality players. It's not just about spending the most money, it's about spending it wisely. Now, the big question is, will this trend continue? Are we seeing a new era of football where the traditional giants aren't as dominant as they used to be? If the fixture congestion continues and the big clubs don't find a way to manage it better, I think we'll keep seeing more surprises. The big clubs are under pressure to win every trophy, every season. And if they keep pushing their best players to the limit, we're going to see more injuries, more burnout, and more underperformance from the clubs we expect to be at the top. In the next few years, it wouldn't be surprising to see even more upsets. Maybe a team like Brighton or Real Sociedad will make a deep run in the Champions League. Maybe Everton will compete for the Premier League title again, and maybe the big clubs will have to start rethinking how they approach these jam-packed seasons. And who doesn't love a good underdog story? What do you think? Should players go on strike to demand better schedules? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more insights into the biggest stories in football. Hit the bell so you never miss out.